WWE CEO Triple H confirms sad news about Seth Rollins' knee surgery as doctors reveals hospital's midnight saga. He almost died. WWE fans, you won't believe what just happened to the visionary. Seth Rollins' recent knee surgery has taken a tragic twist, and WWE CEO Triple H has confirmed the heartbreaking truth. In this gripping expose, we uncover the terrifying midnight saga inside the hospital that almost cost Seth Rollins his life. From the emergency complications to shocking behind-the-scenes statements by doctors and WWE insiders, this video dives deep into everything they didn't want you to know. It was just after midnight when everything changed. The hospital hallway was silent, the kind of silence that feels unnatural, too still, too tense, too expectant. Nurses moved in hushed, hurried steps. Monitors beeped in urgent succession. And behind one closed door, a WWE superstar, the face of a generation, lay unconscious, slipping between life and death. Seth Rollins, the visionary, had entered the hospital for what was supposed to be a routine knee surgery. But nothing about that night was routine. And now, just hours after a procedure designed to save his career, doctors were fighting to save his life. Inside that sterile room, time slowed to a crawl. The lead surgeon, drenched in sweat despite the hospital's cool air, called out for assistance. A second wave of complications had erupted post-operation, a sudden drop in blood pressure, a dangerously irregular heartbeat, and then, for a moment, nothing at all. No pulse. No breath. For 62 seconds, Seth Rollins was clinically dead. They revived him, yes. But the silence of that minute still echoes through the halls of the facility, and through the corridors of WWE's top offices, where CEO Triple H received the call that shattered his composure. The news didn't break through press releases. It wasn't posted on WWE's official account. There was no Twitter statement, no somber video. Instead, the truth was passed between hushed conversations in boardrooms, whispered behind closed doors in locker rooms, and shared in teary, middle-of-the-night phone calls between the people who knew what was really at stake. This wasn't just about an injury. This wasn't just about a superstar missing SummerSlam. This was about how close WWE came to losing Seth Rollins forever. Triple H was reportedly in Connecticut when he got the call, an unnamed WWE official, breathless on the other end of the line, telling him the surgery had gone wrong. That Seth was being rushed back into the ICU. That things were bad. Very bad. It was just past 12:47 a.m. And in that moment, Paul Levesque, the cerebral assassin, the architect of NXT, the company's chief executive, felt powerless. According to a close friend, he sat in silence for nearly 5 minutes, staring at the floor, phone still pressed to his ear long after the call ended. Then he stood up, walked to the corner of his office, and punched the wall. It wasn't anger. It was helplessness. At the same time, in a quiet home in Iowa, Becky Lynch was sound asleep, unaware that her husband's life had almost slipped away. The couple, known as wrestling's power duo, had planned to travel together to the post-op recovery center once the surgery was over. Becky had stayed behind with their child, trusting the system, trusting the doctors. But now, that trust had been broken. It wasn't until the second call came in, this time directly from Triple H, that she knew something was wrong. He didn't say much. Just a few sentences. It was close. He's stable now, but it was close. That was all it took. According to someone close to her, Becky didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply sat down on the floor, holding her daughter close, and whispered, "Don't take him. Not like this." What happened inside that hospital that night remained shrouded in secrecy. But bits and pieces have started to emerge, fragments of a story too heavy to ignore. According to a hospital insider who requested anonymity, the surgery itself had gone as planned. A standard ligament reconstruction on Rollins' knee, an injury he'd carried for months, possibly exacerbated during his recent title defense. But hours after the operation, Seth began complaining of severe chest pain and shortness of breath. Then came the oxygen crash. The heart monitor spike. The code blue doctors suspect a rare post-surgical clot had traveled toward his lungs, causing what they described as a near-fatal embolic event. Emergency intervention followed. Defibrillators. A second round of anesthesia. And then, for just over a minute, nothing. The man who had headlined WrestleMania, who had carried Monday Night Raw through injury, chaos, and competition, had almost been lost. When word began to spread backstage among the WWE roster, the mood shifted instantly. What had been a typical week of touring and production meetings turned into a collective hush. In catering rooms, people spoke in fragments. In production trailers, nobody joked. And in the performance center, where so many talents had once trained under Seth's guidance, there was only fear. Multiple superstars reportedly called in sick the next day, not due to illness, but emotional exhaustion. Kevin Owens was one of the first to visit him once he was stabilized. He stayed for 20 minutes and left in tears. Sami Zayn reportedly cancelled a planned media appearance, saying only, "Now's not the time." Even Roman Reigns, whose real-life connection to Rollins has seen its share of ups and downs, sent a message through an intermediary, asking only one question: is he coming back? But returning to the ring is no longer the focus. According to internal reports, Seth's recovery will be long, painful, and uncertain. Triple H confirmed in a closed-door meeting with WWE executives that Seth Rollins will not be at SummerSlam, and likely won't be returning this year at all. Some sources have even suggested that retirement is quietly being discussed, not publicly, not officially, but among the few who understand how close this came to being a farewell. Because what happened at midnight wasn't just a complication. It was a warning. A reminder that even the strongest, most resilient among us are still human. And humans break. Behind the scenes, there is now tension. Whispers of accountability. Questions about whether the medical team missed early warning signs. One anonymous WWE staff member confided, there was pressure to get him cleared fast. He's the face of Raw. But we pushed too hard. We ignored the signs. Another said flatly, this should never have happened. But in true WWE fashion, the public-facing story has remained carefully sanitized. A short message on commentary the following Monday. A brief social media post wishing Seth well. No mention of the midnight scare. No hint of how close they came to issuing a very different kind of statement. The WWE universe was left to guess, to wonder, to hope, and yet, for those closest to Seth, the aftermath has been quietly devastating. Becky Lynch has reportedly not left his side since he was moved out of ICU. Friends say she sleeps in the hospital room, reads him books, and talks to him even when he's asleep, just so he knows he's not alone. He's still fighting, she told a nurse, but I need to make sure he remembers why. As for Triple H, insiders say the event has changed him. Already a man molded by personal loss and public pressure, this brush with tragedy has forced him to re-evaluate everything, from scheduling practices to medical protocols to how far is too far in pursuit of ratings. One longtime colleague described him as haunted. Another said, this broke something in him. You can see it in his eyes. He's scared. And he's angry that he's scared. Because Seth Rollins wasn't just a talent. He was a cornerstone. A locker room leader. A man who never said no, even when his body screamed for rest. And in return, the business nearly took everything from him. Now, with his fate uncertain and his family shaken, the WWE finds itself in unfamiliar territory. Without its visionary. Without its Monday Night Messiah. Without the man who always found a way to rise. But perhaps the most haunting question isn't about recovery or return. It's about what happens if he can't come back. What becomes of a legend whose body has finally said enough? What does WWE look like without Seth's voice echoing through the arena? Without that spinning stomp? That unrelenting fire? That presence? Back in the hospital, Seth is reportedly awake now, but weak. He speaks little, tires quickly, and drifts in and out of pain-managed rest. According to one doctor, he's stable. But stability doesn't mean healed. The same source added, what he went through isn't just physical. It's going to take him time to process that he almost died. Friends have begun to rotate through for short visits. Rhea Ripley, Cody Rhodes, Big E. Even Shawn Michaels reportedly sent a handwritten letter. One wrestler who visited told a friend, "I saw something in his eyes. Not fear, but fragility." And Seth was never fragile. The entire situation has exposed an uncomfortable truth that many in the wrestling world spend their lives trying to avoid. That pain, when buried long enough, always finds a way to resurface. That pushing through isn't always heroic. Sometimes, it's lethal, and for the fans, those who chant his name, wear his merch, and believe in his vision, this story isn't just about a superstar who almost died. It's about a man who gave too much. About a system that demands everything. And a family now left wondering if the sacrifice was worth it. The Midnight Saga continues to unfold quietly, in whispered updates and private texts. WWE is now reportedly tightening its backstage medical reviews. Talent meetings are being scheduled. There's talk of new rest protocols and stricter post-surgical monitoring. But these changes come too late to change what happened in that room. Too late to take back those 62 seconds of silence. Becky, still at his side, is said to have told a friend, he'll come back when he's ready. Or maybe not. But whatever happens, this time, it'll be on his terms. And that may be the only piece left to find in all of this. Because what happened to Seth Rollins wasn't scripted. It wasn't choreographed. It wasn't a storyline. It was real. And in that reality, even the strongest warriors fall. This is where we stop. For now, the days following the incident have blurred into one long stretch of uncertainty for those closest to Seth Rollins. Inside the hospital room, time doesn't follow the usual rules. Hours pass without movement. Minutes feel like lifetimes. And each breath he takes is a quiet victory. The machines around him hum and beep with a steady rhythm, but nothing about this recovery feels stable. Every small movement, every flicker of consciousness, carries weight. Becky watches it all, every wince, every whisper, every sigh, and she writes it down. Not for publicity. Not for performance. But so their son will one day understand what his father survived. Meanwhile, behind the polished walls of WWE headquarters, crisis meetings have taken over the executive floor. Legal teams, medical advisors, and PR handlers have been looped in. Everyone is asking the same question: how do we move forward when the man we built so much around nearly didn't make it? Triple H hasn't left the building in 2 days. According to a production manager, he's been sleeping in his office, alternating between rewatching footage of Seth's most iconic matches and reviewing internal reports on what went wrong. One night, when only the security team remained in the building, someone reportedly saw him sitting alone in the conference room with the lights off, just whispering to himself, "We pushed him too hard." There's guilt now, a heavy, suffocating guilt that's creeping into everyone who's worn a headset or held a clipboard backstage. Seth Rollins was always reliable. He never pulled out of a match. He never complained about the travel. He showed up early, stayed late, mentored younger talent, filled in when someone else was injured, and carried storylines on his back even when his knees were screaming for rest. And WWE let him. Because that's what the company does. That's what this business has always done. It rewards pain with praise. It celebrates suffering as sacrifice. Until one night, in a hospital room bathed in fluorescent white light, that sacrifice nearly became a eulogy. More than a few superstars are now questioning everything. In quiet corners of hotels and rental cars and gym locker rooms, conversations are happening that would have been unthinkable months ago. Is it worth it? How much do we owe the business before we owe ourselves? These aren't just rookies or mid-carders. These are veterans. Champions. The same ones who've watched their friends retire broken, paralyzed, addicted, or worse. Seth's scare wasn't just a medical event, it was a mirror. And a lot of people didn't like what they saw staring back. Internally, WWE is already bracing for fallout. Insurance evaluations are being rerun. Wellness policies are being reviewed. But even with these actions, many are wondering if it's already too late to fix what this culture has created. Because Seth Rollins wasn't reckless. He didn't go off script. He followed orders. He performed through pain. He did everything they asked, and it nearly killed him. That's the message now echoing through every hallway, every production truck, every guerrilla position. Not what a tragedy, but this could have been any of us. For Becky, the weight is different. It's not just her partner in that hospital bed, it's her daughter's father. The man she's built a life with. And though she's shown remarkable strength through this ordeal, there's a quiet rage building behind her eyes. According to one close friend, she's already begun asking questions WWE isn't ready to answer. Why wasn't his workload adjusted sooner? Why were the signs ignored? Why was he back in the ring with a known tear in his knee? These questions aren't just emotional, they're legal. And that's what has some WWE executives worried. Because this isn't a storyline that can be rewritten. This isn't heat that fades. This is real-life negligence, and it's now sitting in a hospital bed in downtown Nashville with a scar that runs deeper than his skin. There are whispers, quiet but persistent, that Becky may take time off, not just to support Seth, but to decide if she even wants to return at all. A friend of hers from NXT said it best, she's done everything. Titles, main events, WrestleMania moments. She doesn't need this anymore. And now she's wondering if it ever needed her. But while the world waits, the WWE universe is starting to put the pieces together. Fans are noticing how quiet things have gotten. No updates. No tweets. No Seth Rollins merchandise promos. Just silence. And that silence is beginning to feel ominous. Rumors have begun circulating online that his condition was far worse than initially disclosed. Some say he may never wrestle again. Others believe this was a cover-up from the start. That WWE knew the risks going into the surgery and rolled the dice anyway. Whether any of that is true remains unclear. But what is certain is this, the man known as the Visionary is no longer invincible in the eyes of the fans. And that might be the most painful realization of all. Because Seth Rollins didn't just build his career on athleticism or promos or championship belts. He built it on resilience. On the idea that no matter what happened, injury, betrayal, loss, he would always come back. Stronger. Louder. Brighter. Now, for the first time, that comeback is no longer guaranteed. Sources close to the situation say that Seth has begun physical therapy, but the road ahead is steep. His mobility is limited. His endurance, depleted. Doctors have warned that even a return to full health doesn't necessarily mean a return to the ring. The trauma his body endured during that post-op complication has left scar tissue, both literal and emotional. It will take months, perhaps years, to know if he can wrestle again. And even if he can, whether he should is a different question entirely. In the meantime, a quiet tribute has begun circulating among WWE talent. A photo of Seth, taken backstage during one of his earlier title runs, has been printed out and posted in locker rooms around the world. On the bottom are the words, "For him. For us. For the ones who gave too much." It's not part of any official campaign. There's no hashtag. No merchandise. Just a shared reminder that the ones who light up the ring the brightest are often burning out on the inside. Triple H, for his part, has refused to do any media since the incident. Those who've tried to reach out have been met with polite deflections or complete silence. But a source close to him says he's taking this personally. That he started pushing for backstage changes, real changes. Not just policy updates or PR stunts. He's talking about mandatory recovery cycles. Mental health leave. Independent medical reviews. Because this time, it wasn't a developmental talent. It wasn't someone on the rise. This time, it was Seth Rollins. And that, according to the source, shook him to his foundation. But is it enough? Is it too late? WWE has always been an industry built on endurance, on mythology, on the larger-than-life personas of its stars. But what happens when that mythology collides with medical reality? What happens when the body that carried Monday Night Raw for 10 years suddenly can't carry itself out of a hospital bed? As the days pass, fans remain hopeful. Tributes continue to pour in. Superstars have begun dedicating matches to Seth. Chants break out during Raw and SmackDown. "Thank you, Rollins," echo from arenas. But those chants carry an undertone now, part gratitude, part fear. Fear that they may never get to chant it for him live again. That the curtain call might already have come, but without the music, without the pyro, without the standing ovation. In a quiet moment, a friend visiting Seth recently described the atmosphere in the room as peaceful, but heavy. Seth reportedly smiled when they walked in, whispered something indecipherable, and nodded. But he didn't talk much. He just listened. And when they got up to leave, he reached out, gently touched their wrist, and said, "Make it matter." No one is quite sure what he meant by that. Maybe it was about his legacy. Maybe it was about time. Maybe it was about life. But the message has stayed with them, and now, it's beginning to circulate among those who were there that night, those who have visited since, those who love him. Make it matter. Every match. Every minute. Every sacrifice. Because if Seth Rollins has taught us anything over the years, it's that moments are fleeting, but meaning is forever. Outside the hospital, the world spins as usual. Raw airs on Mondays, SmackDown continues on Fridays, and fans cheer for their new favorites. Tea for those who lived through that night, through the cold corridor and the gut-wrenching silence of those 62 seconds, everything feels different now. WWE's locker room has always carried with it a silent agreement: pain is part of the job. Different now. WWE's locker room has always carried with it a silent agreement: pain is part of the job. But what Seth's near-death experience shattered wasn't just a body, it shook that unspoken agreement to its core. It asked a question no one had dared to face in years: what if the price is too high? Some talents have started to voice concerns privately. One NXT performer, just weeks away from their main roster call-up, reportedly told their coach, "I don't want to be a martyr for ratings." And they're not alone. The younger generation of wrestlers is watching this unfold with wide eyes, not with rebellion, but with reflection. They see Seth not just as a mentor, not just as a main eventer, but as a man who gave everything to a system that nearly let him die on the operating table. They're starting to ask themselves, how far am I willing to go? And yet, the story of Seth Rollins has never been one of quitting. Even now, as he lies in recovery, surrounded by machines, nurses, and whispered prayers, there's a flicker in his expression that suggests the fight isn't over. According to a nurse on duty, Seth asked for a notebook 2 nights ago. Just a blank journal. No cameras. No social media. He wanted to write. What exactly he's writing is anyone's guess, but some believe it's his own retelling of that night. Not to capitalize on the moment, but to make sense of it. Because for a man who's always controlled the chaos of the ring, this level of vulnerability is foreign. And terrifying. Becky, meanwhile, remains his anchor. She hasn't spoken publicly. There's been no press conference, no statement. But those close to her describe a woman holding herself together not out of obligation, but out of necessity. Because if she breaks, everything else might too. In one rare moment of solitude, reportedly witnessed by a friend, she stood by Seth's bedside, held his hand, and simply said, "You don't owe them anything anymore. Just come back to us." That one sentence says more than 100 promos ever could. Backstage, the creative team scrambles. There are holes now, storylines that revolved around Seth, matches that were supposed to peak at SummerSlam, segments that can't go on. But none of them are complaining. There's no frustration. Just a collective understanding that this moment is bigger than bookings. Bigger than belts. This is real life. And real life has consequences that don't fit into 3-act structures or planned heel turns. Triple H, still wrestling with his own guilt, has reportedly started pulling back on his day-to-day role. Not because he's leaving, but because he's recalibrating. Those who've worked closely with him say he's become quieter, more introspective. He's stopped micromanaging creative. He's spending more time with the talent directly, not to direct, but to listen. And he's been visiting Seth. Not often, but enough. During one of those visits, according to a medical staffer, he brought with him a single folded piece of paper. No one knows what was written on it. But when he left the room, there were tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, other executives have begun preparing for potential long-term outcomes. Internally, two paths are being quietly discussed. The first is optimistic, a full recovery, a triumphant return, perhaps at next year's Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, complete with a redemption arc that mirrors the journey Seth's been on. The second path is more somber, a formal retirement. Not immediately, and not as a punishment, but as an acknowledgement that sometimes, the body's limits can't be ignored. That for all the love and passion in the world, no title is worth a father not waking up next to his child. As for Seth's fans, they've responded the only way they know how, with unwavering love. Murals have begun to pop up in cities like Chicago, Atlanta, and even Belfast, tribute art showing Seth in his iconic poses, surrounded by glowing light, the word visionary scrawled beneath him. On Twitter and Reddit, fans have begun sharing their personal stories of what Seth meant to them. From a kid who met him at a signing and said it changed his life, to a veteran who said watching Seth's comeback from injury gave him the courage to walk again. These stories aren't exaggerated. They're the ripple effects of a man who gave more than just matches, he gave belief. Yet with every tribute, every message, comes the same haunting refrain, come back safe. Or don't come back at all. Just be okay. It's not the kind of thing wrestling fans say often. Usually, it's we want tables or this is awesome. But this time, the chant is different. It's protective. It's parental. It's human. Back in the hospital, the days are slow. Seth eats sparingly. His therapy begins with basic stretches. He needs help sitting up. He can't stand for more than a few seconds. But he smiles when Becky walks in. He smirks when their daughter tries to climb onto the bed. And when the nurse told him someone had sent a care package from Iowa filled with fan letters, he reportedly whispered, "They always show up." Even now. One of those letters came from a 13-year-old boy in Florida who wrote, "You made me believe that you could fall down and still get up. Please don't get up too fast this time. We still need you." The letter sits taped to the wall in Seth's room. He sees it every morning. Meanwhile, WWE is preparing for its most emotionally complex tribute yet. Plans are being drawn up for a special Raw episode, one not advertised as a farewell, but as a celebration. A night where the roster, from legends to rookies, will come together not to mourn or to eulogize, but to honor the man who has become the soul of the locker room. There may be no Seth appearance. There may be no Becky promo. But the night will carry his fingerprints all over it. And yet, as this saga unfolds, one lingering question refuses to disappear. If this had gone differently, if Seth Rollins had not survived that night, how would WWE have remembered him? As a champion? A workhorse? A martyr for a business that demands silence in the face of suffering? Or would they have remembered the man, the husband, the father, the quiet leader backstage who never needed the loudest voice because he always let his actions speak louder? That question weighs heavily now, because even in survival, the scar remains. And no matter what happens next, whether Seth returns, retires, or simply fades into the background, the business will never be quite the same. In the end, maybe that's what his near-death experience has given back to the industry. Perspective. A rare, uncomfortable, necessary clarity. That pain should not be valorized. That silence isn't strength. That even in a world built on kayfabe, the human body is not a gimmick. It breaks. It bleeds. It dies, and maybe, just maybe, this time, that truth will be enough to spark something different. A new culture. A better one. For now, Seth Rollins remains where he is, recovering, reflecting, surrounded by love, and carrying the weight of a question only he can answer, not "when will I be back," but "do I need to come back at all?" Across the industry, there's a silence that hasn't settled since that night. Not the kind that follows a loss, but the kind that comes when everyone knows how close it was. Not a storyline. Not an injury angle. But a real moment, where death brushed past the ropes and almost took one of their own. Seth Rollins, the man who once declared himself the future, now stands as something even more profound, a mirror. A mirror to what this industry has celebrated, what it has excused, and what it has broken. The midnight saga inside that hospital changed more than one man's future. It began to shift the culture. Slowly, but undeniably. In the weeks since, conversations once hidden have surfaced under fluorescent lights and folding chairs. One trainer, speaking to a group of NXT hopefuls, broke from the usual speech about grit and instead said, "This isn't about who can survive the most pain. It's about who can walk out of this job with your soul and your body intact." That line stayed with the room. It felt like permission. Permission to speak. Permission to feel. Backstage agents are reevaluating match structures, and veteran superstars are beginning to pull back from the "I'll work through it" mindset. There's now an unspoken rule circulating among some of the top talent: if you're hurt, speak up. If you're tired, take the week. If your heart isn't in it, sit down. It's not being seen as weakness anymore. Not after Seth. There's been no return date set, no video package teasing his comeback. No one is saying the word retirement, but no one is promising a return either. And that's okay. Because for once, the business is allowing someone to heal at their own pace. WWE may be built on